Stop me if you've heard this one before. Republicans are bending over backwards to defend Donald Trump. This time, it is for comments he made behind closed doors on Capitol Hill, calling the city of Milwaukee, which is, hosting the Republican National Convention, quote, horrible. But it seems lawmakers can't get their story straight. Some claim Trump was referring to the city's crime rate. Others insisted he was referencing election integrity. And a few, well, they pretended he didn't say it at all. Jamie Harrison, chair of the Democratic National Committee, joins us now.
Chairman. Good.
It's a mess.
Chairman. All right, so let me get this straight. The RNC spends an entire year going around the country to find the perfect spot to host their convention for Donald Trump. And he comes back now and goes, oh, it's just horrible. What does that, tell people what that means for donors, what that means for activists, what that means for the city. We saw the mayor come out and say, well, y'all still coming, right? Because we're ready for you. We're ready to do what we need to do. But talk a little bit about the impact. When you put this process together, is detailed, it's important. And the selection of a city is not just a one-off. There were people in Trump's orbit who were part of that process. His friggin' daughter-in-law is sitting at the head of the RNC. So how does this break for them, particularly given that your members of Congress going, did he say that? No, he didn't say that. He said this.
Well, first and foremost, on a positive note, happy Father's Day weekend to you, Brother Chair.
Thank you, sir.
And to all of the fathers out there. Listen, this is a disaster for Donald Trump and the Republican Party. There's so much that goes into, Michael, as you know, goes into selecting a city for your convention, but also working with that city for the convention. You're working closely with the mayor. You're working closely with the governor and all of the security and emergency officials. Those folks aren't happy today that the nominee for the Republican Party believes that their city is a horrible city. So many of those nuanced things in the end that you have to work out, those folks are going to just turn their heads and turn a blind eye. So, if they needed that street closure or they needed something to happen, they're like, well, go to the city that you don't think is horrible, right? I'm also wondering if I'm Reince Priebus, who is the chair of the financing for this convention, what the hell is he going to do in order to encourage people to come and invest more money into the RNC in Milwaukee? Listen, I was in Milwaukee this last weekend. I marched in the Pride Parade. I had a Black Men's Roundtable. I had a roundtable with Latino citizens there about immigration. I visited churches. This is a remarkable city, vibrant city, very, very diverse, has a proud union background. And so it is amazing how Donald Trump just stepped in this. And this is the city with the largest number of voters and probably the most prominent battleground state.
I was going to say, exactly.
It's idiotic. It is absolutely idiotic.
But
and that's why keep Donald Trump on TV as much as possible, because he will say the dumb crap like this every time and gift wrap this election for Joe Biden.
Well, Mr. Chair, speaking of Joe Biden, we are seeing him deplane in Los Angeles right now. He is arriving in L.A. after concluding the G7 summit in Italy. And folks might be wondering why the president is in L.A. He has got a star-studded fundraiser that he is attending this evening. He is getting into the beast right now with his daughter, Ashley. And Ashley looks tired. Joe Biden looks ready to rumble, honey. Mr. Chairman, talk to us about this event that's happening in LA, this fundraiser. This is why you are not at the table with us today. You are also going to be attending this fundraiser. How important are the efforts that you all are undertaking in LA, and how will that translate to broader support for Democrats across the board with the monies? Because the money, we know, is important.
It's so important. Well, listen, this is the second part of, you remember we had the 3 presidents. This one will be 2 presidents. And I think we have another event later on next week in which President Biden will be with President Clinton and Secretary Clinton. This is going to be a great event. We're going to have President Obama, President Biden. We'll have George Clooney, Julia Roberts. We'll get an opportunity for folks to really talk about how unified we are as a party moving into this election, and how we have to do everything possible to compete in these battleground states. And as you said, the proceeds of these events go to what we're doing in the battleground states. In those battleground states, we have opened almost over 200 offices in places like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan. Now, I'm hearing that the Republicans haven't opened any. Actually, they had in Milwaukee, ironically, in Milwaukee, they had one of these African-American outreach centers that Ronna McDaniel opened. Well, they've since closed that, and now it is an ice cream shop. So the next time Joe Biden goes to Milwaukee, we'll make sure that he stops by there and
have some ice cream.
Give a little tip. Give a little tip to the folks in that new RNC ice cream shop that's there.
Mr. Chairman, you talked about battleground states, but you're also investing $2 million in 11 non-battleground states. I mean, first, before I even go to you, Chairman Harrison, can we just talk, Michael Steele, about the fact that over at the RNC, they're using their money to pay for Donald Trump's legal bills. Right. DNC has so much money, they're investing in non-battleground states.
Exactly. Here we go. And Chairman, you want to be in this position right now if you're a national party, right? I mean, you are on the ground, you are in the field with voters. You're in states like Wisconsin, where apparently, I guess the Republicans now think it's a horrible place to be. So let them think that. Meanwhile, you're going to continue to do what? The work you're already out there doing, building the resources and putting them in place.
That's exactly right. And this is what we did in the midterm. Part of how we beat back the red wave was we went back to this 50-state strategy of investing on the ground early in these states, not only the battleground states, but in all states. One thing that President Biden told me when I became the DNC chair, and he asked me to become the DNC chair, was that he was recommitting this party to investing in Democrats all over the country. And so we have increased the amount of money that we are sending to state parties by 25% in the previous cycle. When you go back to the golden days of the 50-state strategy, we are even 45% more than what Howard Dean in terms of sending resources into all of our states across the country. And so that is paying dividends because we understand it's not just the top of the ticket, it is also the bottom of the ticket, the state house races, the state senate races. Michael, you know it. I mean, you were the expert in doing this at the RNC, that it's investing in those on-the-ground races, and that is how you lift the entire boat and you continue to win. And so that's our strategy at the DNC, and this is a strategy that President Biden wanted us to invest in. We've done a lot. We're going to continue to do more, but we're investing in Montana, South Dakota, Ohio, Alaska, Nebraska, Texas. These are places where the National Party over the last few years haven't always given resources. But we're pouring resources there so that we can compete everywhere.
I did a little raise the roof for Nebraska, a little hometown love for the folks in District 2. I know they appreciate it.
Maryland also.
Oh, I know. Maryland's going to be competitive this year.
We are being told to go. We're having a little too much fun with you, Chair Harrison. Alicia, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome back to the weekend. Donald Trump returned to the actual scene of the crime this week, heading to Capitol Hill for the first time since his extremist supporters violently stormed the building January 6, 2021. And of course, congressional Republicans rolled out the red carpet for the man whose election lives in a world of delusion, put their constitutional duty and their very lives in danger. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. He is the ranking member on the House Oversight and Accountability Committee. Welcome, Congressman. Good to have you back.
Thank you for having me. Delighted to be with you guys.
So to recap, he comes to Capitol Hill on the heels of a guilty verdict in what I would call the election interference case out of New York, pending federal charges for conspiring to overturn the 2020 election, some of which culminated in that building. And he returns emboldened to a party devoid of critics. What does that mean for this moment? What does that mean for democracy?
Well, he came back to the scene of his crime. He made no apology to 150 Capitol officers, MPD, Montgomery County police officers who were injured and wounded by the mob he unleashed against us on that day. There were Republicans who had at least tried to cry foul at that moment, who now have completely swallowed all their misgivings and are
Mitch McConnell, chief among them.
Yeah.
they're trying to pretend like nothing big happened. And Donald Trump can feel proud that he has consolidated cultish type control and power over the Republican Party, but it's a scandal and a disgrace for the country.
I mean, Hakeem Jeffries had this to say along those very lines about this meeting on Capitol Hill and Donald Trump's return. Take a listen, folks.
It was shameful and a complete embarrassment that my extreme MAGA Republican colleagues decided to welcome the insurrectionist in chief back to the Capitol as a conquering hero, not someone who lied about the 2020 presidential election and incited a violent mob to attack the Capitol in order to halt the peaceful transfer of power.
This is not something that happens in a vacuum, right? Like, Donald Trump returning to Capitol Hill is not just business as usual. I believe what we saw this week is actually a preview of what is to come if, in fact, he is elected president in November. A man whose party, whether they are state leaders across the country or elected members of Congress who are sent there to represent the people in their districts, are willing to bend the knee and bend over or forward, depending on what you think, to do whatever this man asked them to do. For what reason?
Well, we're seeing a complete corruption of public institutions as well as individual officials in the federal branch of government, in the legislative side and in the judicial side. And, that's what unifies what's happening in the Supreme Court, what's happening in the Republican Party, what's happening with congressional Republicans. An absolute corruption of their duty. I mean, we swear an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, not to uphold one guy or one party or the interests of one billionaire sugar daddy, and yet that's what's taking place now. And yesterday, they bowed down to the gun manufacturers and gave them exactly what they wanted, throwing out the rule of law. I mean, it was very clear that when you add the bump stock to the semi-automatic weapon, you've got the functional equivalent of a machine gun. Everybody understands that. We saw what that meant at the Las Vegas massacre, our deadliest massacre in American history. 58 lives wiped out, 500 people wounded, families still reeling from that disaster, and yet they make a mockery of the whole thing with Supreme Court decisions that's got little pictorial illustrations, little drawings through to explain why they don't think it really is operating like a machine gun when everybody understands that it is.
Congressman, Speaker Johnson had a different take on the visit yesterday. A lot of us looked at it and went, okay, why is this happening? This is what Speaker Johnson had to say about their meeting with Donald Trump.
We talked about how to grow this House majority and how he will help in doing so, and then how we'll help him as well. And this is a unified effort by the party. We're feeling good. As we walked out of the room today, one of our colleagues walked up to me who's been around a long time, been in Congress a long time. He said, I feel better. I feel more confident, more energy, more enthusiasm right now than I've felt in probably 40 years in politics.
That to me, I can't speak to what that member, saw over 40 years, but I know what we've seen over the last 8 and in the direction this country is going under the leadership of Donald Trump and Republicans. How do you, as a member of the current minority in the House, reposition the argument before the American people on issues like you just talked about, bump stocks and the economy? We're not talking about the news of the economy this week. I mean, you had the Dow continuing to surge. You had inflation coming down. There's so many good elements, and yet we seem to be stuck in this rut of talking about the same old crazy out of the grand old party. that sort of furthers their narrative. You know, oh yeah, things are great, and we need Donald Trump back because things are otherwise so bad.
Yeah. Well, look, I think that was a very candid and honest statement by Speaker Johnson. All they talked about was politics, how they're going to try to get more people elected to give Donald Trump more power. Were they talking about the climate change that is going to create this terrible heat wave across the country?
We're going to feel it this week, y'all.
I mean, there are people going to Trump rallies who are passing out while he's denying climate change. People are being carted out into ambulances at his rallies. Are they talking about gun violence? No. That's a big joke for them. You know, they turn the American flag upside down. They hoist high the NRA flag because that really is the flag of their party. You know, the GOP follows the NRA, which follows the gun manufacturers at this point. So I take him in his word when he said, oh, yeah, we got back there and we just talked about trying to win and saying and doing anything possible to win so we can get back in and Donald Trump can resume his money-making operation. I mean, everybody understands that's what it's about. He doesn't have any plans for America. He's going in to make money for him and his hotels and his family, just like Jared Kushner, who brought back $2 billion from the homicidal crown prince of Saudi Arabia.
So let me ask you, when you see Don Jr. Taking photos with Viktor Orban, I think we all read it one way. How do you read it?
That the kind of corruption that they want to bring back with Donald Trump to government is intertwined with authoritarianism. I mean, corruption is the basic point of authoritarianism. We're not going to worry about Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and infrastructure, the stuff that we're trying to do in the Democratic Party. What they're going to worry about is getting certain people rich so they all get a piece of the action. And so people have got to understand that we will have a government like Orban in Hungary or Putin in Russia or Kim Jong-un in North Korea or Xi in China or, you know, Marcos in the Philippines or El-Sisi in Egypt. That's where we're headed if we let these people get back in. And it's not just Donald Trump anymore. It's all of them. The people who are in, the ones who have not gotten off the bus, they're doubling down on the corruption. And for Liz Cheney and for Adam Kinzinger and Mitt Romney and the other people and Michael Steele, the people who are saying, no, we're not part of this anymore, more power to them, because those are the Republicans that we need to hear from in this election. We're talking about moving into a completely different kind of government under these people.
We often make the point about, like, when I saw about there was political reporting about Donald Trump calling up Mike Johnson after his conviction, saying you have to do something about this. And then I saw this week, I'm like, this feels like the opposite of what happens in a democracy. But Reverend Barber had this to say earlier this week, and I think it definitely knocked me back. Maybe it'll knock y'all back too. Take a listen.
But I do declare that in this moment, the issue is not will we save the democracy, because democracies can elect despots and demagogues and dictators. Democracies can do that. The larger issue is what kind of democracy will we save? What kind of democracy do we want?
I'm totally with Reverend Barber on this. I mean, when we say we want to save democracy, that makes it sound like democracy is just a status collection of institutions, like it's static and it stays in place. No, democracy is always in motion. It's an unfinished project. And so look at the failures of democracy we have right now. We've got the gerrymandering of our districts. We've got voter suppression. We got 700,000 people right here in Washington, D.C. who are not represented in Congress. We got 3.5 million people in Puerto Rico who are not represented in Congress. We got to get democracy moving again. That's something that Tocqueville said in Democracy in America. He observed that democracy is either shrinking or it's expanding and growing, and we've got to get back on the growth track.
On June 19, 1865, in Galveston, Texas, the last black Americans in enslavement were finally told they were free. 1 year later, black Texans commemorated the day, now known as Juneteenth. In 2021, President Biden and Vice President Harris signed into law the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. This was a long time coming, thanks to tireless years of work from leaders like Ms. Opal Lee, who is considered the grandmother of Juneteenth. Now in its fourth year, the Biden administration is marking Juneteenth with several events, including this week's concert on the White House lawn. Joining us now is Director of the United States Office of Management and Budget, Shalonda Young. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Director Young, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I think so. There's two things. There's a commemoration and celebration of Juneteenth this upcoming week, which is, Michael detailed the history. And then there is, separate from that, what this administration is doing for Black Americans. And you had the Vice President with D.L. Hughley this week talking about what's at stake for Black voters. I want to play that and then have you respond on the other side.
Everything's at stake. Think about it. We brought down Black unemployment to the lowest level it's ever been. We've increased housing. We've done a lot more to do. A lot more to do. For example, how many Black persons and white persons who have diabetes need insulin? They're paying $400 a month if they're a senior. Now everybody's paying $400 a month. Now they're paying $35.
President Biden on D.L. Hughley's radio show. I've been up too early. There are folks that would say Juneteenth is great, lovely, the celebration on the White House lawn, love it. But what is this administration doing for Black people? What do you say to those folks?
Well, Simone, I say the same thing. It's great to celebrate. We should always take a moment, acknowledge. I think we should all be proud that the president, working with bipartisan members, got this recognition and this day to reflect. I'm from Louisiana, so I always grew up hearing the stories next door about what led us to Juneteenth. But it's about doing what's best for the American people. So we celebrate for a day, we remember for a day, and that reminds us, invigorates us to get up and do work for the American people. Try to bring programs. My job, I get to look at investments. What investments get to people who have historically been left behind? Often people like the ones I grew up with. Not just the first Black person who's run the budget office, but also grew up in a town less than 2,000 in South Louisiana. That perspective should mean something. So I certainly hope every day I get there, I bring that perspective of regular folks, because my family won't let me forget I'm a regular person, and they let me know what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. So we celebrate, and we then take that moment, that day, and reinvigorate and remind ourselves we get up every day to make sure investments get to people, especially those who've historically been left behind. Look, this is about democracy. You listen to this president, and he puts it in the terms of, if people don't trust their government, if we don't remind people we're there for their best interests, this little experiment called democracy, that also helps erode. So I think about that in that context. He reminds us what the stakes are if we don't do our job well.
But Madam Director, I want to key on what you said, because you're absolutely right. For working families, Black families, and in other communities that have been disadvantaged economically and socially and politically, looking to this administration, there are really good signs, not just signs, but actual data of success. When you look at, for example, the funding for Black communities in the budget coming up in 2025, it's including maternal health, advancing equity across the nation, subsidized tuitions for HBCU students. There is a very clear, focus by the administration on those communities that are often left behind, those working families, those minority communities. How come it's not translating? How come they're not getting that piece, that experience that you just talked about, that this administration is actually there fighting for them, and that they see that? You have the list of good achievements from, job creation, et cetera, but it's just, what's the translation problem?
You're right. It's a feel. Also, I think I'd miss the mark if I tried to tell people how to feel.
Right.
I think prices are too high. If we don't acknowledge that there are some things, some real pocketbook issues that are still front of mind for people, we miss the mark. Yes, this president's added 15 million jobs, more than any president in a 3-year period. Yes, we saw in 2023 the lowest Black unemployment on record. Yes, inflation is coming down by 60%, but we have more to do. Now, on that front, I worked in Congress for 15 years almost. The president has done what he can himself and with the help of Democrats in Congress, passing cap on insulin for $35, for example. But we have to take it a step forward, and Congress has to be a partner with us. If you care about bringing down costs, why won't you partner with the president when his budget says, hey, maybe families shouldn't go broke paying for affordable child care? Maybe we should have a universal pre-K. Maybe we should invest in Head Start. That's not just good for children and families. That lets women and men get back fully in the workforce. That makes sure you are paying only 7% of your income if you take up our child care proposal on child care. Otherwise, what are families doing? They're not allowed to fully integrate into the economy. They drop their kids off at places that they don't feel comfortable in. So we are doing all we can with the tools we have, but we need a Congress who is willing to not just say this costs too much. Work with us. We put proposals forward. If you like insulin capped at $35 if you're on Medicare, let's work to do that in the private sector. His budget is asked to do that. We need a Congress who's willing to not just talk about it, but do something.
There's something of a misnomer about the way we talk about all of these issues, right? As though there are Black issues and Latino issues, because there are. There are challenges that disproportionately face each community. But something like, bringing down or improving maternal health, that makes life better for all Americans, right? Having greater access to higher education, even if the resources are going to one specific group, that changes the pool of employees for businesses across this country. Sometimes I think when we talk about these things that are targeted and need to be targeted, part of what gets lost is that doesn't just benefit that community because we live in community with one another.
You know what has just shocked me? Things we used to work on a bipartisan basis, equity, diversity, when did that become controversial? Yeah. I told you I'm from a small town, rural town. Doesn't matter if you're Black or white, it's hard. It's hard coming, I tell my friends from the city, you think it's hard when you don't have a large income to make it in the city. Go to where I'm from and see how hard it is if you aren't given opportunities, especially in education. Those affect everybody. When we talk about equity, it's helping rural folks. It's helping those disproportionately left behind, Black folks. If we all do better, it's not taking anything from anybody. It's trying to make sure that all Americans have access. Again, it's about this little experiment called democracy. If people lose faith in their government, if we aren't seen invested in communities that don't feel a part of the American dream, and give people opportunity to make sure their kids, like my 2.5-year-old, have a better life, we're not doing our jobs.
Donald Trump is leaning on an old trope to insist he is not racist. This week, when asked about his relationship with Black voters, Trump told Semaphore, and I quote, "I have so many Black friends that if I were a racist, they wouldn't be friends. They would know better than anybody and fast. They would not be with me for 2 minutes if they thought I was racist." And just to underscore the point, I'm not racist. Yesterday, Trump visited church leaders in Detroit, launching a Black voter coalition ahead of the November election.
Okay, so, it's Father's Day, so I'm going to, limit the level of stupid here as much as I can. Because, when you got to tell me...
Let's just
when you got to tell me you got so many Black friends, then I'm having...
Can people be racist and have Black friends?
Yes, they can.
Great.
They can.
Glad
so
we addressed
you
this
just,
at the top.
and it doesn't mean anything. It says something about that relationship, all right? So the reality is... I think we just need to take this for what it really is, and it is more BS from the man who argued for and will argue to this day for the execution of 5 innocent young Black men, the Central Park 5, who looks at the heritage that Simone and I come from on the great continent of Africa as whole countries that believe that, in the face of the racism and the antagonisms that we still get from Proud Boys and KKK members, that they're fine people on both sides. So, spare me the Donald Trump has Black friends BS. It's Sunday morning, and I don't want to have to go to church twice, so we're just going to leave it there.
Well, the problem is he has no other defense for his racism.
Well, how is it a defense for the racism? Like, I just think I would respect it more. You know what? If there's one thing I appreciate about white supremacists, they clear. Okay?
They're very
the Proud
clear.
Boys are very clear, okay? They're very clear.
Right.
Milo Yiannopoulos, he was very clear, not trying to hide who you are. Donald Trump wants to put a little, what'd you say, a mishmash it up, wants to put a bunch of things in the pot, stir it up, and one day he want to serve it to you this way, another way he want to serve it to you in a cup. He's trying to, I think he thinks it's working, but it is not. Like, you can say whatever you want. He wants to say that Joe Biden was the worst president for black people. He's been the worst president for Hispanic people. There's never been anybody so bad. Well, I mean, the civil rights movement would beg to differ. But I think that Donald Trump was actually pretty terrible. And I don't know, $60 billion for HBCUs from the Biden administration seems quite good.
Well, but Joe Biden wasn't sued by the federal government because he refused to provide housing to black people. So, I mean, look.
What did Donald Trump do for black businesses?
Donald Trump ain't done jack for black businesses. And he hasn't done during his 4 years, they'd like to tout, oh, well, we did this, little program where we did some, something in the community where largely white businesses took advantage of that, very, very famously so. So the reality is, what have you done? And you just can't show up in a black church.
With some people that have been supporting you since 2016, because those people on that stage were not converts. Okay, these were part of the 8% of black people that have voted for Donald Trump. And again, you know what? I know some black people in my life that voted for Donald Trump.
Fine.
That's fine. That's fine. But y'all are not the majority. It's like young people at bingo.
Just don't sit there, young people at bingo. Just don't sit out there and act like, that there's this groundswell in the community moving towards you, because there's not. And I think we just need to stop pretending. We're at the point in this campaign where everyone just needs to stop pretending, because when Donald Trump says that Joe Biden's been the worst president for blacks and Hispanics, and there's never been anybody so bad, that's a lie. It's a lie. Stop pretending that it's not. And I think we need to, take his words straight on and not just sort of, well, they did this and they did. No, this is where the man is. It's like you said. It's very clear. Others are very clear. He's not.
He wants to be
shady about it. So.
Well.
Again, House Republicans have showed us their priorities, protecting Donald Trump and throwing red meat to their base. On Friday, the House narrowly passed a defense bill loaded with unrelated culture war issues targeting abortion access, treatment for trans troops, and efforts to combat climate change. Only 3 Republicans voted against all that nonsense. It has absolutely no chance of passing the U.S. Senate. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Jerry Connolly of Virginia. If only the nation's defense were not of the utmost importance.
I know. It is really sad that the Republican majority has decided to use the annual defense authorization bill as sort of a vehicle for their favorite pet causes, knowing cynically that, as you indicated, it's not going to pass the firewall in the Senate, and it's not going to be signed into law by President Biden. But that hasn't stopped them. And it is a sad day, because in the past, we had strong bipartisan coalitions to protect the national security and national defense and not use it as some kind of punching bag.
So, but everything is a punching bag with this Republican crew in the House and Senate. In fact, the countermeasure to this effort to force Democrats has been Republicans vowing to slow business down in the Senate, specifically with respect to presidential nominations. Simone mentioned in an earlier segment the expansion of the addition of 60 plus new judicial, 65, I believe, new judicial appointments that can be made by this president. How does Senate and House Democrats sort of parry thrust, if you will, these efforts by Republicans to come after issues like abortion through the Defense Act, to come at the administration by slowing up its appointment power and capabilities? What is the countermeasure that you see going into this election that signals to your base you're in this fight, that you're standing your ground and you're not just saying words pushing the point, but you're actually using the tools available to you, more so in the Senate than the House, admittedly, to make it clear to the American people what you're up against?
I think Democrats have to be willing to be as tough as Republicans.
Say the thing, Congressman.
When they go low,
you go toe to toe.
There you go.
Go toe to toe. Yeah, it would be nice to go high, but we'll put that off for a little while. The stakes are just too high. Yeah. I mean, you showed a picture of Judge Cannon in Florida. That's what goes wrong when you put MAGA Republicans on a bench with no experience. She's willing to thwart justice for a partisan political purpose to protect Trump. So we need to do what Mitch McConnell did in putting Supreme Court justice on the Supreme Court, ignoring every past statement and just using raw power to make sure that his president's appointments got confirmed. Well, we need to do the same.
Right. I want to make sure we talk, Congressman, about this bilateral security agreement that President Biden and Zelensky have signed. A thing that I think is important to understand is just how fragile this agreement is, right? That there is an understanding that so long as President Biden is president, this commitment stays in place. We have a presidential election looming in November. We're always talking about the consequences and the stakes of that election. An agreement like this hangs in the balance, and with it, the global order.
I think it's important to remember that when we voted on the Ukraine aid package last month, it passed with 311 votes. That's a pretty strong bipartisan vote. Yes. in the House. That's right. And so a future president has to take cognizance of that there is strong bipartisan support. You know, I work with Mike Turner, chairman of the Intelligence Committee, 100% in on Ukraine. Mike McCall, chairman of our Foreign Affairs Committee I serve on, 100% in. Mike Rogers, Armed Services, 100% in. So in that particular category, we have a strong base of support for this agreement and possible future agreements. We're going to see Ukraine through until it prevails.
Is there any other funding requests that you think looming between now and November that may need to get addressed? The administration just this week announced, the vice president did yesterday, a $1.5 billion package that will deal with tech, but more importantly, humanitarian issues for Ukrainians. Do you see anything else coming down the horizon for funding that may cause a little belly aching in the House?
Well, you know, frankly, there's not a lot left on the Republican agenda. Not that there's been much to begin with. This is the most unproductive Congress in 60 years. So we're going to be dealing with essentials, a farm bill. The Republicans insist on votes on these 12 appropriations bills, but it's mostly a feel-good process for them to get their base excited. It's not a serious effort at funding the government. And sooner or later, we're going to have to face funding the government in the fall to get us through either the election or into next year. Right. But short of that, barring some kind of unforeseen situation or emergency, I don't see a lot of productive legislation that we're going to be addressing.
You know, we talked at the top of the show last hour about NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg and the meeting he's going to have with President Biden. But he's in town for about a week, and he's meeting with lots of different folks. Secretary Blinken, he's going to Canada, he's going to Ottawa.
I'm having lunch with him.
He's meeting with you and Congressman Turner,
that's right,
who's chair of Intelligence. Do you ever go into these meetings feeling slightly embarrassed by the United States of America?
Yes, there was certainly a 5-month period in which I felt embarrassed. I mean, Democrats gave Speaker Mike Johnson a lot of credit for bringing up the Ukraine vote. I don't.
I think too much.
Way too much. We lost 5 months, and Ukrainians died, and territory was lost during that 5-month period. No excuse for it. We had the same 311 votes 5 months ago that we had when we finally voted. And it was dithering because a new speaker didn't know how to put together a coalition or allow a free vote on the floor that had overwhelming bipartisan support.
When we talked to Secretary Stoltenberg was on our show a couple weeks ago, and after that funding package passed, and we asked him, did he think it was too late for Ukraine? And he was quite diplomatic, as you could imagine, but essentially said that the aid did come late. The point you just made, Ukraine lost ground. There are less than 4 months until people start voting in this country. You represent a district in Virginia. I think that people are a little more tuned in than most, I would argue, across the country, particularly on these issues of national security, Ukraine, what's happening in the war between Israel and Hamas. But you're also traveling the country. Are you concerned that the American people and some of these other places and spaces that you travel to are not grasping the gravity of this election and what it means for the world, not just us here at home?
Yes, I do. And I think people, people vote their interest. So what's in it for me? I don't like inflation. I don't feel that. And we got to remind them, I love that question. Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? 4 years ago, we were rationing and hoarding toilet paper. Remember that? And we had shortages everywhere. The economy was tanking. And here we are 4 years later in the ideal economy, leading the world, breaking records on the stock market, on unemployment, on job creation, and we've kind of forgotten what it was like 4 years ago. A lot got done, and we've got to be not only taking credit for that, but we've got to be bringing that narrative to people and reminding them what it was like and how far we have come. And that's a huge accomplishment.
Especially, Michael, because we keep hearing about voters having Trump amnesia.
An enormous amount of Trump amnesia. I mean, we're having this conversation in the last hour about why Americans still give more credit to Donald Trump on the economy than Joe Biden. As you mentioned, 4 years ago, rationing toilet paper and watching our neighbors, family members die from COVID because a president was ill-equipped both mentally as well as with the federal government apparatus to do something about it. And the only thing that got done in those 4 years was a tax cut for 90% of the American people who did not benefit from it.
That's right.
So how do you reconcile that, Congressman, where people looking at this administration and its accomplishments, not just on the economy, but on infrastructure and globally, that they give more credit to the guy who wants to be a damn dictator?
I think sometimes in messaging, Democrats tend to appeal to, logos, the reason, cerebrally. And most human beings kind of live a combination of that and my gut. And we can't be ashamed about appealing to people's self-interest. We've got a lot to talk about in having satisfied your self-interest. We haven't persuaded them of that. And I think also we don't get it that you got to repeat, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
I told you 6 months ago about that, Simone. Why didn't that register?
Yeah, I mean, the people.
Yeah, so we've got to get a lot better at boringly repeating messages until they penetrate and sink in.
Because Republicans are very good at
and that's what they've done, and that's why they continue to get the benefit on the economy. A ham sandwich could be on the ballot with the R behind its name, and they'd be like, that ham sandwich is pretty good on the economy.
That's right. That's right. It had a lot of bologna, but it was still a ham sandwich.
Congressman Connolly, thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
President Biden is expected to announce new executive action Tuesday aimed at protecting certain undocumented immigrants from deportation. Sources familiar with the plans tell NBC News the action would protect undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens from deportation and allow them to work legally in the country. Now, this comes as Biden faces the first lawsuit over a different executive action he announced last week that would tighten asylum restrictions at the border. Joining us now is Democratic Congresswoman Delia Ramirez of Illinois. Welcome, Congresswoman.
Congresswoman, looking forward to Tuesday. I know so many families that are going to benefit from this action. I'm sure you represent so many families that are going to benefit from this action. Talk us through what it is going to look like to have this administration keep American families together.
Yeah, thank you for having me. You said I know families. I personally know families. I'm the only member of Congress married to a DACA recipient. So this announcement is an announcement that many of us have been literally anxiously waiting for. Look, I come home every single week. My husband and I are in the midst of an adjustment status. We got married 4 years ago, a long long, extended, difficult, complicated process, and he still has not had an adjustment. We're still working the legal, the different legal things that need to be reviewed before he can have an adjustment. But there are so many families right now that are at the brink, worried every single year that while we have an anniversary of DACA at any point that can be taken away from them, the idea that spouses of citizens can be able to come out of the shadows, some of them have been here for 20, 30 years, and families can stay together, it's the biggest relief in their lifetime. And so we're all excited. We're anxiously waiting for details of it. But the reality is that it's also going to be good for our economy. I mean, think about it. DACA recipients, for example, contribute more than $2 billion a year just to Medicare and Social Security. The idea that more spouses, regardless of their status of their DACA or not DACA, but if they're married to U.S. citizens, if they're able to come out of the shadows, if they're able to get these work permits and be protected, they'll be able to also go into the tax rolls and contribute even more to our taxes. So, when I think about it, to me, it's a win-win. And I've said this to the president. President, we've been talking about immigration reform for over 30 years. You get to choose what kind of president you want to be. The president that keeps families together or the president that further divides them. On Tuesday, our president will courageously take on action that the Congress has not taken, and that's to begin the process of keeping many families together.
Congresswoman, it might shock folks and that this actually needed to be done, because there are so many people, myself included, who was reading about this when the announcement first came, and I'm like, wait, I have friends who previously who were not undocumented but had green cards. They married people years ago to become U.S. citizens. That is not something that is currently afforded to undocumented individuals who are married to American citizens now. And so this executive action is actually crucial and critical. And I don't know if folks around the country who are not directly dealing with this every day understand that.
No, Simone, to your point, look, I think people assume you marry a U.S. citizen and within months or weeks, you're going to get some notice that your status will change. That is not the case. First of all, if you marry a U.S. citizen, you came in on a visa, you overstayed your visa, and then you pass the biggest eligibility test, you begin the process, and it takes years for some. But if you came in the way my mother came in or the way that Boris came in, Boris came at the age of 14 through the southern border, went through Guatemala and Mexico. Folks that came in that way, many of them have bars, and it doesn't matter that you're married to a U.S. citizen, you won't even get a green card. You are still undocumented. You don't get any benefits. I have a cousin who is married to a U.S. citizen for 20 years. And she says, Delia, I don't understand. I don't understand what I have to do, how many lawyers have to lie to me. And we're still in this place. And it's been almost 20 years. And so the reality is that there's no automatic trigger that you marry a U.S. citizen and you become a green card holder. And then years later, a citizen. There are more than 300,000. We're actually estimating probably closer to 800,000 non-citizens married to U.S. citizen spouses who could potentially get relief through this executive action. And so this makes sense. Families should not be separated. And frankly, Simone, what better surrogate to the president than someone who says, President Biden did what no one else did, what Congress wouldn't do. He made sure that my husband is able to stay with me. He made sure that my wife no longer is in the shadows. This is someone that I want to vote for. This is someone that deserves another 4 years.
Congresswoman, you speak of a very important reality for a lot of families out there, but there's another reality that is playing alongside that is all-consuming as well, and that is the incredible amount of lies, distortions, and fabrications about immigrants, migrants, DACA individuals in this country. I'd like you to take a quick listen, and I really don't want to spoil people's Father's Day with this, but it's important to put it in the conversation so we understand exactly what this man who wants to be the next president is saying about our immigrant population when he talks about the millions of illegals pouring into the country. Let's take a listen.
Millions of illegal aliens are pouring in and they're taking your jobs. The black community is being hurt more by the illegal aliens, 16, 17 million. They're taking your jobs.
So let me just be clear for everyone. They are not taking your jobs. And stop the tropes and the lies of pitting blacks and Hispanics against each other for your political advantage, Mr. Trump. I give you that gift on this Father's Day. But the reality is very clear, Congresswoman, what is being stoked as well about immigrants coming to this country and what this moment could mean if it's not told right, that this is another moment the Biden administration is favoring someone other than Americans. How do you respond to that?
I mean, every time I hear him, I just want to vomit, right? Despicable is not the right word to explain what I think about what he says and what he does. The reality is we have labor shortages. At any given time throughout the country, we have more than 8 million job openings that we can't fill. I have colleagues of mine, Republicans in Homeland Security, that have said to me, Congresswoman, I know we can't talk about it in committee, but we have a lot of manufacturing jobs back at home that we can't fill. Why can't they stay here and get a work permit? And then I look at my colleague and I say to him, why can't you vote on it and don't allow your orange Jesus to continue to influence you? The reality is they're not taking jobs. And what Donald Trump and white supremacists do is attempt to pit against each other, Black, Latino, Asian American, poor people, to be able to create that kind of fear, when in reality, you and I both know we have more jobs than we have workers. We have the lowest unemployment rate. And by the way, we talk about the budget and how we need more revenue. Why not give extended work permits, not just to spouses of U.S. citizens, but think about the fact that if we were able to extend work permits to thousands of people like my uncle who have been here for over 30 years, his wife is still not a U.S. citizen. They are paying the kind of taxes that will give local economies, the state government, and the federal government the revenue we need so that colleagues of mine in Mississippi, in Alabama, in Georgia, in Marjorie Taylor Greene can get the Medicare that they get, that they deserve, and also the benefits, because more revenue is coming our way.